So we're going to start off this discussion by talking about mediocrity. I think it's a really interesting thing. Most entertainment right now is operating for viewers and for subscribers as distraction. Most of the stuff that's working in terms of acting right now is not really wonderful acting. What they are doing, a lot of the people who are working consistently, what they are doing is kind of going through the motions, doing what they know how to do, and that has become successful. So it's an interesting problem. What do you do as an actor when you see work that you're like, yeah, that was really good and entertaining, but it didn't move me? How do you look at the nature of your craft? How do you approach auditioning or even approach this craft? And the pandemic did a number on actors. The pandemic and then two strikes following it back to back. Before that, the industry was caught in, I think, a crisis of what it wants to be. So an identity crisis. Marvel and that whole push of Marvel Disney kind of took over the industry. And now, even if you look at Broadway, most of television and big budget, huge blockbuster movies have been now translated to, very interestingly enough, Broadway musicals. So there's a real interesting issue that I think comes out of mediocrity. And I think really, to me, what the biggest and the foremost issue is the lack of studying, the lack of learning, the lack of knowledge gaining. And it's an interesting problem. I actually had a conversation with somebody about this, man. And the conversation started with, well, what was it like to see Gene Hackman and Dustin Hoffman and these brilliant actors who, by the way, and Robert Duvall, who all three lived together in the 70s in New York. What was it like to see them audition? Because there's no footage of that, right? Like, there's nothing you can go out there and find that you can find those three in particular really auditioning. And a friend of mine said, well, at some point, right, they didn't have to audition well, but at some point we had to see their potential or a moment of greatness for us to really be invested in trying to put them in a movie. These are not typical looking Hollywood movie stars, right? They're not out of the John Wayne formula, right? They're more out of, if anything, the anti-hero, the Cagney, the Bogies, the Robinsons. They're out of that kind of track record. And nowadays, if you think about it, great, you have to do something really great in an audition to even garner attention, to even get interest about what you could be. And that's a really tough thing to do when there's over 350,000 actors constantly auditioning, and the majority of those actors don't have a resume. They haven't done big projects. They haven't done big films. They don't have a lot on their back. So how do you get over that pressure and put that to work? That's a really tough thing. But as my friend said, well, once you get into the rare air, right, where you do enough really great work, you could be mediocre for days. Like, you can continually be mediocre. But there's a real interesting problem that I think that you brought up, Alex, that the nature of our heroes, our acting heroes, they've left the scene, right? I mean, it's essentially, if you think of where Jack Nicholson retired, Gene Hackman retired, Denzel Washington is considering retirement, and of course Daniel Day-Lewis retired. So there are a lot of iconic, powerful actors who were hungry for greatness that in our minds can't seem to find that in terms of stories. They might, in terms of their own desire, might want to create, and that's what I think Denzel has done wonderfully, is found a way to produce, direct, and do a lot of different things. But it's tough to find great material to work on. And that's because mediocre sells. What's just okay, just okay enough to really be put out there into the universe. And that's a very tough thing for artists who are kind of struggling to get in to that golden that golden sphere, and feel like, well, I should probably do what I see the other people doing, and then they don't book the job. And it's because they're not going for something great. They're not invested in the depth of what storytelling, what creating a character, what moving people, what touching people really can be.